All right. All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend with your host, Rick Harvey Rice, and my correspondent,
Simone Shree.
All right. So today we are talking restaurants and nightclubs. What does that look like? If I want to own one, what does that feel like? All that good stuff. So we do have a guest who will join us a little later on. But out the gate, we're going to talk about all the stuff that's going on in the world today, because I'm telling you, it is beyond mind-blowing, just all that's happening. So let's jump right into it. So Simone, what do we have on the rundown today?
Okay, so first is a little bit about Georgia's reopening and the fact that the surge in coronavirus cases people were expecting actually has not happened so far, which is a great thing. It's been a little over a month since the shelter-in-place order started lifting, and things haven't gotten a lot better, but they haven't gotten a lot worse either. So I think there's something to be said about that. Unemployment claims have also started to drop a little in May, so I think that's also relevant based on what's going on. There's a whole lot going on right now, and it definitely affects business and business owners. But I think to the extent that we're going to talk to somebody who is the president of an association, and we're going to talk about Black businesses, that's probably the best place to stick it, and we can go a lot further after that. Here she goes.
All right, so where do you want to start? I'll let you pick where we start.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about just Georgia and Georgia's curve. So Vox News put out an article this morning. What they were talking about is the fact that the spike we were thinking would happen with COVID-19 cases hasn't happened. The worst hasn't arrived yet either. So that is essentially flattening the curve. That's the definition of what that looks like. So there's still dozens of deaths that have been reported on a weekly basis, unfortunately, but the outlook may be getting better. Only about 6% of inpatient beds are being occupied right now for COVID-19 related reasons. So we're not in the lower half of the states, which is a really good thing. And people do have a couple of questions as to why that may be the case. There's speculation that, Georgians just aren't going out still. Businesses, although the state has reopened, businesses haven't necessarily opened up the floodgates. They're still limiting their lobby hours. Even financial institutions are limiting kind of their lobby hours and asking you to drive through. That can have a lot to do with this. There are also gyms that have not opened yet and have kind of limited capacity. Grocery stores are limiting capacity, how many people are in here at once. All those things could be playing a role as well. And there have been a lot of data hiccups for Georgia, but I think that maybe a combination of the fact that more people are getting tested and we're also not just rushing back into being reopened probably has a lot to do with that. But they are speculating that people are kind of staying home anyway, and that may be a piece of this. So we can talk about, yeah.
But that's the question, though. If we have all these drones of people who are protesting and they're around each other, but they're not leaving these protests and getting tested, how do we know that these numbers are not changing? That's the part I can't seem to wrap my head around. If it's not mandatory testing and people are congregating, we've seen the beaches for Memorial Day. We've seen the protesting in pretty much all 50 states. If nobody's getting tested like that, how do we know what these numbers really look like? I think that's the scary part for me. It's like, how do we know what these numbers really look like if nobody's getting tested?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who kind of feel like they can't necessarily trust the numbers and the data. I do think that although testing is more widely available, I think that there's been reports that people haven't taken advantage of it. Like the New York Times was reporting on that earlier, that the number of people who've gotten tested has not gone up, even as the availability has gone up, or at least it hasn't gone up at the same rate. So I still think people are kind of feeling like if they don't have any symptoms, they're not getting tested. And maybe some people don't know that that's available. Like they've tried to, I think the governor and other folks have tried to say like, hey, we're testing more people, but I don't know if that news has made it around, or if, in your circles, do people know that they can get tested or where or how? I just don't know if it's common knowledge or if people know how to act on it.
I mean, I think, again, we get to people being confused because, you're telling me that this is so serious, but at the same token, now the floodgates have kind of opened. And like you said, it doesn't really revolve around business and stuff, but just what we saw Memorial Day, what we're seeing with people protesting. I think people have gotten really confused as like, okay, not even 2 months ago, you were telling us we can't leave the house. Now we're protesting in the streets. We're filling up beaches. We're starting to go back to restaurants. The things that you say we're supposed to be doing to kind of slowly opening up, we're not doing. So I think everybody's kind of confused, and you can tell it in the memes. The memes that people are, because memes kind of are part of the culture now. So you can tell in the memes that people are using. It's just like the memes that say, "Oh, well, where's coronavirus?" a couple of months ago, we couldn't leave the house, and all of a sudden, it's not a big deal. It tells you kind of the way people feel. It's like, okay, well, 2 months ago, we couldn't leave the house. Now, we kind of jump back into stuff, and it's really confusing, and it's really just like not a good situation to be in, because we're used to, especially because I am older, we're used to having an administration that controls the narrative. We're used to having, a controlled pandemic. And now we're seeing almost a free fall where nobody has any real answers, nobody has any clear leadership, and nobody really understands or can convey what's going on. I just don't understand. I'm confused like everybody else. I'm just like, I'm not leaving my house. I'm good. There's a grocery across the street. I don't have to really go anyplace else because my life has kind of slowed down as far as me leaving on a day-to-day basis. So I'm like, I'm good. I don't know if
and you're working for yourself.
Or not. Exactly. So, outside of my part-time job, which I don't miss, I don't really have a
so that's a,
I don't have a dog in the
we got to acknowledge that's a great spot to be in. But before we kind of segue, because this is a good tie-in, unemployment has been a big part of this as well, right? Like there are definitely people who are very eager to get back to work and would very much like that opportunity and can't necessarily do that. Or work from home, that is. And so there has been a report that the Labor Department believes that we've turned a corner. There's a chief economist out of New York who said that they think the country is slowly turning its corner. The unemployment claims have gone down, I guess, to, unemployment rate to 13.3% from 14.7, which is just a slight downturn. And it's still a very high number, still a post-World War II high. Folks have kind of said overwhelmingly, it's going to take a while. We're not just going to spring right back to where we were as if the last several months haven't happened. But they do think that slowly but surely we'll be getting there, and maybe there'll be less layoffs of kind of a great magnitude. But I also think that's a piece of this too, is that there are folks who want to get back to work, and the protests are a entirely different thing. I think that's more of a reflection that people are more fed up than they are concerned about their safety. Doesn't mean it's a safe thing to do. I just think there's a lot of us are just more fed up than we are concerned with that. But I think to the extent that companies are saying, well, maybe we'll do more remote hiring, maybe we will kind of keep this going and keep working on our technology and allow people to do this. A lot of the bigger companies, especially in the tech world, have said that they're going to try to do that. So I'll be very interested to see if that's something that can continue on with businesses that have that luxury. But every business, that's just not an option. It can't get a virtual haircut. So.
I mean, I think we have to also acknowledge what happened when COVID hit. The fact that JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, Hertz, all these major companies have all gone under and have filed for bankruptcy. And, I think, again, people get lost in bankruptcy and you realize there's different chapters and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, JCPenney's pretty much is closing all their stores, which JCPenney being on the heels of Sears, not even 2 or 3 years ago, it's just kind of like, okay, we're shifting industries again, because now we're seeing where retail has been hit almost directly by people online shopping. That compiled with the fact that a lot of these companies did not change their business model. I think we get stuck, especially those of us who are older, we get stuck in this, oh, well, it's not going to last. This online shopping thing, it's not going to last. It's good. We'll keep doing what we're doing. We'll have to change our business model. We good. And then it comes down like a wrecking ball. And it's like, no, you haven't been good for years. Now we're at a point where there's nothing we can do for you, because even when we look at your business model, it's so outdated that we don't want to invest money in it, because you guys did not take the time to reinvigorate yourself or reinvent your business at a time when it has been calling for it for the last couple of years. So I think we have to acknowledge what all has happened, what has transpired over the course of COVID. I think a lot of people that thought their industries were foolproof realize we're not foolproof. Like, we really have to stay up. We have to step our game up if we plan on surviving. So I don't know. This is I don't think anybody could have predicted this. I don't think anybody knew that even if they had predicted this, they would have such a profound effect on the world as we know it. So for me, it's kind of interesting that, the protests and all that stuff is happening at the same exact time in history that we're trying to deal with the whole COVID thing. Like, it's mind-boggling to me that we're even still going, especially considering the lack of leadership we have in our highest administration. I just thought of a president hiding in a bunker. Yeah. And there's not like a nuclear bomb on the horizon.
Yeah, those memes, the hiding in the bunker memes, that's something too. That's, yeah.
I mean, what can you say? Like, this is the same man I'm standing behind the podium and will, actually he did. He stood behind the podium and talked trash to pretty much all the Democratic governors. It was just like, you guys need to get your states together. What are you doing? And then when they come to your front door, you go hide in the bunker. Like, is this really what we're doing, in this time? Is this really what we're doing? Is this really what the world looks like? I can't.
Yeah. If I could be honest, the biggest thing for me, I didn't expect much more there, but I did get a little chuckle out of the Bible situation. I did get a little chuckle out of that. And unfaith communities have been another topic of conversation, and people saying, well, can we reopen our churches and congregate and all that stuff? And I think on a congregational level, what your saints look like and how old they are and how vulnerable they are, and people's health conditions because you're taking prayer requests, and so you kind of got to use your discernment in terms of, how healthy or how safe this is. But when Trump, I think that he was very early on in his presidency when he was citing a verse in the Bible and said 2 Corinthians. And from that moment on, it's just been kind of funny to me to listen to. I've never heard anyone say 2 Corinthians. It's been kind of funny to me to imagine him, I think, trying to step into this role for these evangelicals that means so much to his base, when I don't believe he is ever got on his knees, let alone got on his face and talked to our Creator, let alone when he holds that Bible and he's got it like this. And I've just never seen anybody hold a Bible like that. Not to mention it's crispy and clean and looks like it's never been cracked open. And it's just funny. It's just funny.
I mean,
a small shadow of comfort in this week.
They set him up, like the fact that they did not take a picture with a used Bible. Like, I swear they set him up. And this is funny because we get to like sit back. Well, it's not really funny because the fact that this happened is not cool. But the fact that they continuously set him up, he's so stupid he doesn't realize they're doing it. It's just like. And
of course, they found the one picture of anybody else in history holding a Bible like that, and it was Adolf Hitler. And it's
I mean, I'm telling you, the internet stays undefeated. When you look at all the comparison memes they make to him and Hitler and all the gestures that they both seem to make, one does have to wonder, has he studied Hitler? Because he has these things down to a science. The hand thing, the Bible thing, the internet stays undefeated. But I do want to say this because I get my notifications from CNN. So 2 major medical journals have retracted separate coronavirus studies over data concerns. Data used in the studies came from same international registry, and auditors could not get all the information needed to verify it. One study found that COVID-19 patients treated with the drug hydrochloroquine and chloroquine were more likely to die or suffer dangerous side effects. Still, other studies have come to similar conclusions. Meanwhile, the U.S. has recorded 1,000 more coronavirus deaths yesterday, bringing the nationwide total to more than 108,000. Which honestly to me, when you think of the number of people in America, is that really a high number? When you think about the millions and billions of people that are in America, we've seen worse numbers. And I stand by that. We've seen worse numbers for worse pandemics. Not to say it's not bad, but I'm just saying. And again, I don't think, when you're talking about the U.S., I don't think that 1,000 more coronavirus deaths, I don't feel like that's accurate. You have protesting in 50 states, and you're telling me out of all these protesters, you only have 1,000 new cases, or 1,000 more deaths, I should say.
Yeah, like I said, the deaths and the cases are definitely very different, but at the same time, we don't want a high number. We got to keep that in mind, right? It's 100,000, 108,000 more than we would have had. And again, if it hasn't struck you, and if it hasn't been close to your home, then maybe it's not, a big deal to you. I was just listening to someone in Texas. I think he was south of Boston, I think Beaumont, because outside of the Houston area, and was saying, they haven't had as many outbreaks in that area. That's true. There are plenty of parts of the country that maybe just haven't been touched by it, but 108,000 is not a small number. And again, when it depends on how close to home it's gotten for you, how devastating, you kind of find it, but it's still 108,000 that wouldn't have died otherwise. And, it's a big enough deal that we shouldn't be. There are things we can prevent and can't prevent. So, it's more a question of like, well, can we just do what we can to prevent it? It's not a question of like it being, the Black Plague, we don't have to draw those sorts of comparisons, but It's about what we can prevent and what we can't. And people get really outraged, and rightfully so, about deaths that we can prevent, So that's where I think that comes from, is that if we can do something, we should do something, But to your point as well, to the extent that people who do have COVID-19 can now, it's now not clear that they're immune from that. That's also kind of troubling for folks, because, maybe, there was that second wave that was predicted for so long. And now I think there's mounting evidence that you can catch it again, and maybe be less lucky the first time around. So that's another situation we have to kind of keep in mind too. So.
All right, so segue real quick, and we're gonna get to our guest. She's so patiently waiting, so we'll get her in just a few minutes. So we definitely have a conversation with her about what's going on in the specific field. All right, so as it pertains to Ahmaud Arbery, a Georgia Bureau of Investigation agent testified that Ahmaud Arbery's killer used a racial epithet after fatally shooting him. I don't know what the relevant was for that, but okay. In February. According to the testimony, William Bryan, a defendant in the case, told police he heard Travis McMichael hurl a profane slur at Arbery, who had been out for a jog after McMichael shot him 3 times with a shotgun. The investigator also said the 3 men charged in Arbery's death engaged in an elaborate chase with the unarmed black man, hitting him with a truck as he tried to escape them. The attorney for the 3 men involved said they did nothing illegal, which I find amazing. So you see nothing illegal in this whole case, that you've done nothing illegal.
Yeah. So that's what their attorneys have to say, or they have some pretty bad ones to be, they have to say like their client is innocent. So there's a few things here too, like with that report coming out, there was a lot of argument, a lot of controversy about the hate crimes bill, and Georgia being one of only a handful of states that doesn't have hate crimes legislation. And after the death of Ahmaud Arbery, which was pretty, across the state, was pretty widely slammed by every elected official, at least, as being a public lynching. I heard, I think it was Sam Olens and Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp essentially said that, we need to get this case out of that district because, we have to get justice elsewhere. But there were a lot of white Republicans in office who basically said like this was a public lynching, and who wanted that hate crime bill to go forward. And so that's why it's been introduced and will be taken up when the session reconvenes on the 15th. Not necessarily on the 15th, but the session reconvenes on the 15th, and it will be taken up again. And then also citizens arrest, which I was writing about, and a lot of activists were talking about. Why do we have laws that allow citizens to arrest other citizens? Why do we have laws that allow citizens to feel like they may have some sort of legal covering if they want to play cop today or play hero today, and act as law enforcement? McMichael in particular, the McMichaels, there was a retired officer. His son was an ADA, I want to say, in the same county. So they have a law enforcement background, but they were not active duty law enforcement or off-duty law enforcement at all. So they were citizens, and we don't need citizens arresting other citizens. I think that's just kind of a recipe for disaster. So, but the racial slur is important for the hate crimes piece. Not that it will be retroactively applied, but for the idea that, to prosecute a hate crime, you have to, it's one of those mens rea requirements. It's about intent. How can you prove someone, whether they're racist or not, how can you prove that race played a factor in the crime that they committed? So the idea of there being a slur at that moment, I think is a big deal. And then there's also reports that on Facebook shortly afterward, because they had the video for months before the world got it. There was reports shortly afterward that I think Travis McMichael, if not Gregory, I think Travis was on Facebook talking about it and almost bragging about it, essentially saying like, I took care of someone, a bad guy in my neighborhood, sort of a thing. So there's enough to prove that this was a malicious act, that this person wasn't remorseful or afraid for his life, really, if he was able to go on social media and say, look what I did, sort of a thing. But yeah, just one of many cases lately that's just kind of got this country up in an uproar.
Just ridiculous. One last thing, and then we will get to Mrs. Jackie over here. Because you were talking about a bill being passed. So, anti-lynching bill. Apparently, Republican Senator Ron Paul wants to add an amendment to the bill that would narrow the scope of crimes that fall under its penalties. Democratic Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris mounted an emotional opposition, saying the move would weaken the measure. Booker also formally objected to Paul's request, saying the bill would speak volumes for the racial pain and the hurt of generations. Paul has been holding up the popular bipartisan legislation. So they're hashing it out on the Senate floor. And I think it's, again, when you hear these kinds of things, even with the protests that have broke out not only in the United States but in the world, it's still not enough to spark a different thought process from the opposers. And I think that's the amazing part. And my fear is, and I told my mom last night, I was like, I even with all this going on, I still don't think they realize that the minorities are not playing. And if these people do not get convicted between these two particular cases, I think we're going to see a civil war break out, which I never thought I would live to say in my lifetime. But I really believe that's what you're going to see if these men in these two separate cases are not convicted of these heinous crimes. But I still think people don't see it that way. I still think people, even though despite the fact that protests are still going on, this was not a fly-by-night thing. I still think there are people who do not take this seriously and are still determined to do things the way they've been doing things for decades. And that frightens me because clearly they're showing you they're not playing. And, the fact that they're willing to loot and not think twice about it and destroy neighborhoods, which may or may not be their own, should tell you how much they feel like they don't have to loot. So, I'm kind of hoping and praying that they do the right thing in these two cases, because if not, I just don't see it ending well, and that does not make me feel warm and tingling on the inside. But I digress. All right, on to some better stuff, some better stuff. So today we have an amazing guest who is going to be talking about an area that I particularly care about, because those of you that know me know I've spent half my life in restaurants, and I do plan on owning one very soon. So I thought it would be a great thing to bring somebody in who is kind of the expert in this field. So let's welcome Mrs. Jackie Robbins to the show. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing great, Thank you all for having me on this Friday. Yeah, so.
All right, so tell everybody who you are and a little bit about you.
Okay, my name is Jackie Robbins. I am the founder and the president of the National African American Restaurant and Nightclub Association. I've been in the industry for over 15 years. I had 2 successful barbecue restaurants in St. Louis called The Rib Shack, and which was also have a background in real estate and insurance. Before I had my restaurants, I owned an insurance firm, which I was a broker over 22 carriers. And I sold that to start the restaurant business, and which my background and the things I experienced led me to starting the association. And as a successful Black-owned woman and restaurant owner that used her business as a platform to give back and to help. I mean, not just one time, I mean, several times in the community, and always was humble about it. I sent kids to Costa Rica. I participated when kids had to raise money to go on different trips, fundraiser trips. I helped them meet those goals. I fed the homeless once a month with an organization that we were a part of called #LunchBag, which they do have one in Atlanta, and I do help out with them occasionally. Not as active as I was in the one in St. Louis, but definitely a great organization to be a part of for anybody. I think they feed the homeless once a month. We were feeding over 1,000 homeless people a month, and helping them. I gave jobs to homeless people. So I really, really made a great impact from the Boys and Girls Club to giving back to various different known organizations. But one thing that we had a hardship in the family, and that took me, away. One of our family members that was a part of the business needs a heart, and that kind of just took me off my, took me away from my business, and it caused me to end up having to close my business because I came to a point that was just too much. The last result of him having a stroke and getting into a coma. But in that process of me deciding to close my restaurants, which, like I said, we were doing phenomenal sales. We're at $1.2 million a year, but we didn't have the support. I didn't even me as an expert, as we doing so great in the community, business was thriving. When hardships came, we didn't have the support. I didn't have a go-to person, a go-to organization to help me, and nobody all the times that I lended hands, no one was there to lend a helping hand. So in that part, on top of the business decisions that we didn't make, it led me to make sure that I started this organization to kind of help our people, because we have a lot of restaurants. I don't know what community you guys actually grow up in, but a lot of Black-owned restaurants were successful, and we know about, they used to be there, 20 years ago, and such passed, or something happened, a hardship happened, whether it's monetary or something, and they don't exist anymore. So that's the foundation of the reason why I started the organization, to kind of give back, to help other Black-owned restaurants, whether it's with operations, whether it's with marketing, whether it's with funding support, or just having that counsel, that one-on-one, just network of people in the industry that you can have dialogue with and communicate with, that are there, that may be going through some of the same things that you're going to, and bringing these things to the forefront for our people. Because a lot of it, even when I tell the story, when I was even in the insurance industry, when I used to go to different seminars or different things to get information, I was always the minority. You wouldn't see a lot of us at these events, where you go to, some of them were scheduled really early, some of them were, just maybe out of reach, or didn't come to where we get our information at. So I formed the organization to bring the information to our people. We had our first expo, which was in January, which was really great. We had a lot of different professionals there. The city of Atlanta was participated. We had the fire department, the police department. We had Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this real quick before we get into that. With your organization, is your organization like a hub for Black resources, or is it kind of like a chamber that has restaurants that are in the organization itself?
Kind of a little bit one of both. It's really a hub to give information out to Black-owned restaurants and people that's in the hospitality industry, not just restaurants, but caterers, food truck owners, but of course providing the information and resources to them. But also we have participants that have restaurants that are involved as well. So if hopefully I answered your question.
Oh, no, that's because I want to get so that people understand. Because what I'm discovering is that some associations are distributors of resources, whereas others are like chambers where they have people actually join and
You have to
whatever
join.
it could be.
Yes, you have to join. We have a
okay.
membership fee. Yes, we have to join a fee. It's like a chamber. Yeah, you do have to join. So we kind of both. You do have to join it. We have a membership fee starting out at 20. The level you would like to participate in, or depending on if you're, what type of company you are. If you're a small business owner, we have something, or we have for a corporation. So we have it for both. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you created this organization, and how old did you say the organization is now? So you
yes,
you have an anniversary or something coming up.
How old is the organization anniversary coming up June 18th.
Okay, so because you talked about it, but I want to be specific about it. So when you created this organization, what was the layout? Like what did you say? This is what we're definitively going to do.
The game plan was to provide to be an advocate for Black-owned restaurants and nightclubs, to provide education and resources and information into things, whether you just come in for information, or if you need consulting, you need some help, or you just want to network. If you need, we got different opportunities and projects that come through through the organization from other people that's a part, providing that information. But the strategy is to through the organization, helping our people win, starting a restaurant, or if they're already in the restaurant, or they're trying to expand, just helping them in whatever area, whatever stage they are win, because a lot of us don't have that resource. We a lot of us go into business, we have a great concept, a great idea mode, even with this pandemic, a lot of us had it really, sadly, it's a lot of things with that, but sadly it really put a light on who was really prepared, with getting the PPP loans, who was not, really, where you were at in your business. And a lot of us, we might have started the business, but we really wasn't fully operating like a business, and I call it surviving mode business, whether it's restaurant or any business. A lot of us operate in a surviving mode. We really don't put together our policy and procedures and operate correctly. And it starts in the beginning phase. When you set that business up, how you set it up, for how you register your business, how that makes a big sole proprietor, all those things in the beginning is going to set the foundation of how your business is going to operate, your operational system, all those things. So the organization, helps and wants to help our Black people win, because a lot of us have been operating, underinsured, under everything, not really fully operating as a business. And we have a lot of great brands and great ideas, but these factors is one of the reasons why a lot of us go out of business, and a lot of us have went out of business, sadly, during this pandemic. It's a lot of restaurants that didn't survive, and because we wasn't prepared, we wasn't, we were living, like people live paycheck to paycheck, businesses live paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of us didn't make it,
So they're not going to make it. Let me ask you this, because, there's, now we have to say pre-COVID versus COVID. So pre-COVID, what were a lot of the issues that you were encountering, especially with startup restaurants? What was a lot of the things they just were not aware of pre-COVID? We're not talking about now, just before all this happened, coming restaurateurs falling into, particularly African Americans. Because, we think about African Americans, we think about the things that we see in our communities. Not even so much franchisees or franchisors, the soul food restaurants, nightclubs, things of that magnitude. So pre-pitfalls for up-and-coming restaurateurs. We'll get nightclubs in a few minutes. So restaurateurs, what were a lot of the pitfalls you saw?
The pitfalls, funding is the main one. A lot of us, the funding, you start out your business with enough money to open the business, but you don't think about the whole operational side, hiring the right people to run your business, your key marketing. A lot of us don't think about, they think that, okay, if you make this place look beautiful and you do this and people are going to come. No, you have to market your business. You have to make your business aware, and people know that your brand is, so those major issues have always been the things. And I really center it around funding, because a lot of us don't, we either start out, we start out, we might have a certain amount of money, but we don't make sure we have enough money to completely operate like we should, to really give us a good start. Because it takes a lot to do business. And I tell people, like, you just, you can't just start out and think, okay, that just because you have that money to make it look nice and you get it set up, you still have operational money that you need. You still need those things. And a lot of us don't consider that. So.
Okay, so that's pre-COVID. So now that we're in this COVID climate, a lot of small businesses were complaining because they were saying that they were not able to get the loan, which was supposed to go to small business. Now, me and Simone have talked a lot about this, and what we discovered is their definition of small business versus small business. We're thinking a business that has maybe 30 less employees. Apparently to them, I guess they feel like a small business is 500 or less. So what did you see in the climate for, let's say, African-American business restaurants as it pertains to the PPA loans? Like, were a lot of them getting them? If they wasn't getting them, was it there as it pertains to these loans that will be given to small business?
I think it was both. With the unfairness in the system, I'm the whole situation on and people being unprepared as well. But on the first part of just the system, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. I guess really useful, resourceful for an individual. So, on that part. But in all, to me, with a pandemic going on, it should have been more help out there to like guide people to get the funding. And a lot of us didn't, that didn't receive it. We didn't have our paperwork in order, so a lot of all our, our business registered correctly. Some of us been operating and don't even have our business registered. They operating, as a sole proprietor, but you really a LLC if you got, if you got some employees and different things like that. And just operating incorrectly and thinking, really thinking that they have a business they should have been doing. So they got a late start trying to catch up with doing the stuff that they need to do to get their business in order just to apply for the loan. You've seen a lot of that going on because they were not operating. A lot of them haven't been operating correctly. And then just it's a lot of resources. Even our organization, we were providing information, but the one thing that we were trying to do and be there for our people was actually not just for, I'm really a big advocate on not just providing information, but really helping people like one-on-one, make sure like, hey, what's your needs? How can I help you? 1, 2, 3, like if I can help you and hold your hand, because it's a lot of people, even though you might even, be in business and know business, but sometimes, that paperwork part, scares people, or they don't, so just kind of being that one-on-one person to kind of, some people need that, like, hey, this what, or just checking on you and seeing if you did everything, reviewing everything before you turned it in, just kind of getting more eyes on to get that help. And some of us didn't have that, so we, and I think that as the government with everything going on, to me, they should have provided that, for people. And it was SBA been doing some stuff and giving out information, dealing with it wasn't enough, so.
So let's kind of go there, because that's one of my questions as well. Because like I said, I have a vested interest in this because I kind of want to do one at some point. So I kind of have a vested interest in this as it pertains to loans, and we'll say SBA, which is small business, and we'll talk about the people in your service.
Mm-hmm.
For people who are starting restaurants, soul food restaurants, Cajun, Caribbean type restaurants, what are you seeing as it pertains to SBA loans? Are a lot of them starting their business with that kind of funding, or are they getting private investors, or are they getting lump sums of money where they hit the lottery? Breakdown are you seeing? Because, when we think about the SBA, a lot of people think it's not within my grasp because they're going to require all these things that I don't have, all this unnecessary paperwork. So a lot of people don't apply for it. Then you do have people who do apply for it, and like, well, I just couldn't give them what they needed, start their businesses. And this can be pre-COVID and in COVID. But what are you seeing as far as finance for these businesses start up?
Well, I say in number terms, I think this one article was said like 1% of Black people getting loans out there, and of course to getting loans, but from a overall, because I deal one-on-one with and help with preparation on top of doing the association. I also do restaurant consulting and business consulting, and I have gotten us don't get approved on it, and because they don't have the help like myself, where we going one-on-one, or we don't have really having your paperwork in order. It goes back to having your stuff in order, filing your taxes and keeping your that stuff matters. So a lot of people seek private funding, or different ways of getting funding, different other alternatives to getting funding in our community. But a couple other organizations, we are working towards trying to get funding just for us versus saying minority, because what happens when the SBA, or when you say minority, and don't get me wrong, I'm not racist. I love everybody. God made everybody, but I'm still an advocate for our people, So in saying that, when you say minority owned, what's been taking place even with the SBA, a lot of firms for certain funding that's dealing with minority owned, because a lot of people end up putting in place, a Caucasian white lady could, get a loan, versus, they're considered minority, as well. So a lot of different things, transpire from when you put in something saying minority, because it doesn't just go directly for us. So if they have a pot of money that, that's available, and you put minority on it, the percentage of minority of Black people getting it doesn't just fall under the just Black owned people, it's a variety of minorities, women owned businesses. So women could be white or Black, so just, hopefully I answered that. But so we're really working to get to the point. A lot of leaders are trying to work to Wall Street, where we having our own banks, our own funding and the support to help our people, because it's one thing to have all this information out there. And I'm just a really big advocate on not just giving information out, but helping our people with the process, because some of us don't need help, but it's a lot of us more than some that need the help, need that one-on-one process to get resources that's out there. You can say, oh, it's a lot of resources here and there, but how can they tap into it? And when they tap into it, what do they need to do? So
I have a question along those lines for you, Ms. Jackie. So part of what you're talking about is, and part of, I'm sure why you formed this association is because we tend to do what we can for our own. in lots of these situations. Us, we're community leaders, we'll go to our congregations, we'll go to our communities, we'll do education, the books of us who know, and we'll disseminate it. But what I often don't see is that communication streak going back the other way. So often that person who is in restaurants or with nightclubs and talking to them about these things that really matter for them, there also really should be a voice going back the other way to talk about that, to talk to government on behalf of. And some of the issues that came up in what you just were talking about, how problematic those things can be, but also just that there's that knowledge gap there. So whether it's like, you know, how you treat contractors versus how you treat, you know, independent folks, if people are mislabeling their businesses, or overtime regulations, or, you know, paid leave becoming like big workforce issues, and people kind of want to be able to address those, or address, you know, menu labeling, you know, and all the laws that continue to be created around what the menu has to say. I mean, they may not be implemented with Black owners in mind. And so, you know, can you kind of talk about how important it is also that, I mean, there are a lot of policies that get made all the time that affect this whole industry. And it just seems like, you know, is there a way to avoid all that and having a, like, is there a way we can be more proactive about it and make sure that, you know, lawmakers know, like, hey, these are the business owners that are out here, this is what they're doing, and these policies that they have to comply with are just making it harder.
That's one thing that we're working on the government side and the petition side. We haven't been, we've pretty much been utilizing the social media foundation to kind of put stuff out there. But now as we are growing and is growing, we're tapping into petitions and writing and having that person. You need a person, a go-to person in the, like a city councilman or someone that will, you know, be that person to lobby for you. You know, you need your own lobbyists to kind of go and give that information to people. So, because like even with this people surrounds period, it really didn't fit us, you know, it really, so it's been petitions and different things going out now circulating to your representatives and to congressmen to make some adjustments for the PPP, because a lot of the things it didn't really fit us, because, you know, you've given us this money for employees, but, you know, at first when they started it, you know, we weren't able to open. And then when we were able to open, you know, it's still under, you know, a strict guideline of the capacity, you know, so it's a lot of different things that for a restaurant business just in general. So we need some of our own, you know, our own laws and certain things to support us, you know, certain things that we need. So having that being, you know, everybody needs to, you know, be involved with, you know, your councilman, you know, knowing who that is, you know, your representative is, and being, you know, and doing the petitions and writing about things that matter, that fits your industry, in our industry as well.
All right, so let's segue to nightclubs, because they're not the same thing. So as it pertains to nightclub owners, and with somebody, especially in Atlanta, because, you know, these nightclub owners here, that's another one I'm secretly looking at, got an eye on, because I know they're making boot club owners. Like, how are they faring, particularly when you talk about necessity? I think that restaurants hold a higher place, and I could be wrong, but I think they hold a higher place than nightclubs, only because, you know, certain people don't really go out, but everybody likes to eat out. So the need to open is the need to reopen nightclubs, because nightclubs revolve around crowds and people interacting very closely. So what has that been looking like for nightclub owners? Because I don't think we've gotten into a discussion politically about nightclubs.
Actually, you know, they just passed, the governor for Atlanta just passed for the 31st of May to open back the nightclubs, which he had like about 39 different guidelines. Being a nightclub, you know, operating at a 25% capacity level, you know, that's really hard. You know, that's hard for, you know, that's how for a restaurant, I mean, you know, they make money off of, you know, people coming in there, and to be able to have to regulate that is really, really hard. So I really haven't, honestly, had a lot of feedback and seen what people are trying to do. People are just had started they were excited about then this happened with, you know, the young man, you know, sadly with George, you know, Floyd. So I think right when, you know, people were trying to start, you know, making some way back, they weren't able to do that. And a lot of nightclub owners that have a kitchen it's easier for them to make money now in Atlanta. That was the unique thing about that kind of saved a lot of people. But the ones that are strictly nightclubs, you know, some of them, you know, you're not making it back. You know, it's really hard, you know, and then it's hard to regulate. You know, I heard a few stories open right before all the stuff happened with protesting and stuff. Before the curfews went back in effect, they opened, and then some people were coming by and actually they actually got shut down because they were over capacity. So it's kind of hard, to regulate that. You try to, at the door, you always try to regulate in that business, in the industry. You got to, try to regulate as much in going out. But that part is not hard, but trying to build up to make money, that's the hard part. Because like I said, they make money off of crowds and numbers and things like that, Yeah. So.
All right. So let's that I don't know how that was going to pan out because, like you said, restaurants, club owners make different crowds.
Yeah, they make crowds and trying to regulate the crowd. And then if you do go beyond that, then you got a chance of getting fined and getting shut down, and then you have to think about, then you still want to be safe. I'm for being safe. Like I like restaurants that's really known in the community of Atlanta, a Boogaloo restaurant. And, we have been taking measures trying to make sure that, people are safe. We're checking with the thermometer, the staff, making sure kitchen has a mask on. We got the shield mask for the kitchen. So, it's a lot, it's a lot to entail and to maintain. It's like you, in both sides, you got to keep somebody on top of, just somebody designated to making sure you stay in compliance of your health and safety, those things. We got logs where we keeping track of temp logs and all that stuff. But, now since then it's another question with, I think Miss Simone, she was bringing up now with people protesting. It's like now, you've been hearing all this stuff was scared to, but it's just so many things that's out there, so much stuff going on. It's like, you're still trying to be safe, but then you want to, but you're seeing people in crowds, and then, so how can you say this person, you can't have a crowd, it's just so much, like it's so much, and it's so much trying to keep, like, it's a lot really right now. Yeah.
So okay, so with COVID happening, and a lot of organizations that we've spoken with on the show have had to pivot objective, agendas, so on and so forth. So what is you guys' agenda for the remaining of the year as it pertains to working with restaurants, working with nightclub owners? What is on your agenda?
We're going to be launching for our second year anniversary to do a Black-owned restaurant makeover. And the agenda is just really to just seeing, that's our way of being able to give back, because even if you get funding, or get some money or something so you can survive, and coming up with different brand strategies on, changing, that the concept, I always tell a lot of people, how you've been operating and the current concept you in, you need to pivot and you need to change and think about different ways, alternatives. Some people have, and the ones that have, they're doing well, and they're surviving through this. But some people may not have that in them to do, or that creativity side, so they need us. So we're going to launch a Black restaurant-owned makeover that we're going to be partnering up with some other organizations to give back, and some people that are CPA, lawyer, attorney, just to do a whole makeover with what that restaurant owner needs to be successful. So that's our main focus, is just trying to help people stay in business and eat, and stuff. So.
Okay, all right. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to, or learn more about the organization? How do they get in touch?
Okay, well, they can go to the website, www.naarana.org. They can find us there. They can find us on Instagram. It's kind of long, but they can find us NAARANA Association, IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So you can find us on all those platforms as well.
All right, Simone, anything else? Any other questions or anything you got for Mrs. Robbins?
No, I think this was really timely information. I appreciate it. And I didn't realize that this was an effort that I guess I just assume when you hear about like chambers of commerce or restaurant associations, I just kind of assume this infrastructure was already, and that is really just coming together and having to deal with these new issues on its own. I just kind of probably presumed in the back of my mind, there was already a war chest ready for, like, I don't know, a plague like this or a pandemic like this. So
yes, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys having me, and please, anytime. We do have our weekly calls too on Monday, and on Monday we have our weekly call. We normally we're having them at 12 when we were going through the pandemic, but now since some people are starting to get back into where we find our way to dialogue, share information, keep everybody up to date on news, on information, that's what's going on. So that's our call to action. So we love for people to participate. It's on Zoom, and you can find the information on our website and our social media.
So let me ask you, because I always ask guests before they leave. So typically people tend to remember steps. So I always ask the guests to maybe leave 1 to 3 steps for individuals. And in this case, those individuals who really are thinking about owning a restaurant or thinking about getting into the restaurant business. What are maybe 1 to 3 steps that you would tell me at something simple to get the wheels turning for those individuals who want to do that?
The research is the number one. plan, and network. Those are the three things I'll leave you with, because you need to do research. Even when I started my barbecue restaurant, we did research and taste for almost a year before barbecue restaurants, and just experienced and seen, taste their food, whether we taste their sauces, and just the research. That's very important. You need the research. So many of us just jump out, have a bright idea, and nothing great. Kudos if you do. That's awesome. If you're one of those people that come up with bright ideas all the time, but you need to research that idea, research the market, and plan for it. A lot of us don't plan, and then a lot of us don't network. You don't network with associations like ourselves, or other associations like the Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce. You don't network. You don't get out. You don't get information. You really need to network, and be around people that's in the industry that could possibly help you be successful. So those are the three things I recommend it for everybody. Yes.
All right, everybody. So there you have it. Special thanks to our guest today, Mrs. Jackie Robbins. Thank you for being with us on today. And like Simone said, I don't think either one of us do. I think we kind of thought this was something that was already kind of working, and we didn't realize that you were actually having to, create this organization. So kudos to you about all this stuff. And all right, we will hope everybody have a good weekend. We will see you guys again next week, same time, same